Hello, Dicker, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Learn True Health podcast. I'm your host, Ashley James, and today we have a really interesting guest, Allan Paul Roberts, who wrote the book, The Globalist Plan to Collapse Everything to Usher in a New World Order. So before we start today's interview, I want you to go to your kitchen cabinet and pull out your aluminum foil and make yourself a tinfoil hat. Just open your mind. I like the saying, keep your mind so open your brain could fall out. Just open your mind. We always want to think critically, and I'm the most open-minded skeptic. I am skeptical of everything, but I love to walk the high wire between doubt and faith. And I want to gain information and let new information come in that challenges my belief system. And this is how I learn, and this is how you learn too. But a lot of times we get stuck because our belief system becomes our comfort zone. We don't grow in a comfort zone. We just feel very comfortable and safe in a comfort zone. So if ever you go, well, that's silly or stupid or wrong, and I'm not going to listen to that, then you actually are stuck in not learning and not growing and not expanding. You should be able to challenge your belief systems. Maybe you'll learn something. Maybe you'll grow and have a new belief system. That's good. That's good to do that. So just keep an open mind as you listen today. And I'm sure you already have an open mind because you're here listening to Learn True Health podcast. The goal of my podcast is to help you to learn everything you need to learn to achieve emotional, mental, spiritual, energetic, and physical health. That embodies your whole life. So true health is your whole life. It's not just physical health. It's not just eating right, taking supplements, and exercising. There's so much more to health. And we're diving into the good stuff today because it is giving you the information you need to support your family and to protect you and to help you make better and healthier choices. I want to let you know that I give away an amazing resource by you going to my website, learntruehealth.com. If you go to learntruehealth.com/free, you get a portion of my book. I give you a good 30% of my book. And that section of my book is the beginning where you get to experience the transformation, the first few weeks of the 13-week transformation in my book. And so I want you to take advantage of that for free. Just go to learntruehealth.com/free and take advantage of that and start reading and start doing the exercises that install into you new health habits that will take your health to the next level. And I've spent months pouring through research and also pulling on the resources of over 500 interviews that I've done with experts around the world. And I've created an email series that you'll get, between 1 and 3 emails a week. Not bad, not a lot, but they go deep into the content of what you need, the things you're looking for to transform your health. So go to learntruehealth.com/free, sign up. You'll get that portion of my book for free, and then you'll get emails that I have built giving you the foundations of healthy, very, very important health habits that even if you're a health nut, I will teach you something new. I promise. Go through my newsletter series, and I promise you will learn something new. Or maybe I will remind you of some very important health habits that you let slip along the way. So that's learntruehealth.com/free, and enjoy today's interview. Welcome to the Learn True Health podcast. I'm your host, Ashley James. This is episode 549. I am so excited for today's guest. We have Allan Paul Roberts on the show. His website is globalcollapsebook.com, and he has a promo code for us. Thank you so much for giving a discount to my listeners. I really appreciate it. You can use coupon code LTH when you go to his website, globalcollapsebook.com. I'm really interested in what you've uncovered through your investigations, especially around our food chain. And when we think about health, obviously the most important thing is food. You can't out-exercise a bad diet. You can't out-supplement a bad diet. And many, many studies show that actually there's about 5,000 studies that have been condensed into several books that I love by Dr. Michael Greger, the How Not to Die, How Not to Diet, and How Not to Age series, the How Not To series. And he's poured through him, and he has a research team. And then he hired, on top of a research team, he hired a team of fact checkers to fact check all the research, but they poured through over 5,000 studies showing that food is the number one component when we think about health. And who controls our food chain? Who controls how the quality of our food, what is put in our food, right? We need to actually take responsibility and dig deeper. And well, I know my listeners do. That's why they're here listening. So I'm very excited to go in and learn more about how we can advocate for our health through understanding what's going on with our food supply. So welcome to the show.
Well, thanks so much, Ashley. I'm really happy to be here talking with you. And as far as the food supply goes, the book is organized into 11 pillars of society that are under attack and in danger of collapsing. And collapse number 9 is the food supply. And it starts out with a quote by Henry Kissinger, where he says, "Who controls the food supply controls the people." So, the globalists know that the food supply is key, and it's a key control point. But what has happened over the years is, the U.S. has been incredibly productive in terms of producing food, farming food, harvesting food, transporting food. So we've enjoyed some of the lowest food prices in the world because of that. But what's happened at the same time is that over time, it kept getting aggregated up and up and up, higher and higher, until several corporations control an unbelievable percentage of the food supply. And because of that, the quality has eventually degraded in many cases. We have all kinds of herbicides and chemicals on our crops that remain in the food to some extent, as you well know. And, it's also resulted in this tendency toward processed food because that's cheap and it sells well. And so our food supply has become corrupted to a terrible extent. I mean, as we know, in Europe, there's all kinds of chemicals that are forbidden, or if they're not forbidden, you have to label them in such a way that people will understand the risk. But yet in the United States with our FDA, they say a lot of these things are just fine, until recently, even things like, red dye in our food, that is petroleum-based of all things. And so the tendency with the globalist push in many areas is to gain control, to make it so that very few organizations basically have the control of something like the food supply. Because once they do that, then they can just dominate the whole field and dictate what happens, as they have with our medical system too. So it's a common technique is to gain control, roll it up, control it from the top down, and that's pretty much what's happened in the big picture with our food supply.
Your book is called "The Globalist Plan to Collapse Everything to Usher in a New World Order." And I'm just going to play the devil's advocate. So for those who go, wow, that just sounds like a bunch of conspiracy theory, right? That just sounds like kind of whack job, right? Like, I got to tell you, I have the biggest tinfoil hat there is. So I'm with you on this. But I know there's going to be listeners who are like, globalist, a world agenda. What are you talking about? So like, what happened that you got into like researching this? I want to kind of go get your backstory a bit to have some context to this book.
Sure.
And then I'd like you to explain, well, who are these globalists anyway? Like what's going on here? So what happened in your life that you wanted to investigate this and write this book in the first place?
Yeah, I appreciate the question, and I totally understand the pushback that is pretty common. So I wasn't planning to write this book. I own a small business. I'm a really busy guy. I usually feel like I don't have enough time in a day to get it all done, and so the last thing on my mind was carving out time to write a 300-page book. And but in April of 2024, late April of last year, I woke up in the middle of the night around 4 in the morning, and I was just getting ready to get out of bed, and I had this incredibly intense experience, unlike anything I've ever had before. And what happened was, as I was laying there ready to get up, I had this flash where I was suddenly aware of 6 pillars of society that were being torn down. An effort was being made to tear them down, pillars of American and Western society. And it came in an instant flash where I was aware of all 6 instantly, simultaneously, with incredible mental clarity. And it lasted, I'm not sure how long it lasted, somewhere between a half a minute and 2 minutes. And it wasn't scary, but it was incredibly clear. And I was like, wow, what was that? And I got up and went into the bathroom where I keep paper and pen, and I wrote those 6 down, thinking like, man, I don't know what just happened, but I got to think about this. But it's 4 in the morning. I want to get back to sleep, so I'm going to write them down. I wrote them down, tried to get back to sleep. I'm thinking about them, and then I had 3 more, a flash with 3 more things again simultaneously, 3 more pillars of society, and I got up and wrote them down the same way, back to bed, and laid there a couple minutes, and I had 2 more, and it was like, oh, what is going on? I go write them down, and at this point, I feel like I have to explain some context. I am a believer. I am a person who prays every day. I start every day with prayer and meditation. I just have a simple daily devotional that I read a paragraph or 2 out of, the devotion for that day. I think about it, I pray about it, and then I just kind of keep quiet and try to get a sense of God's direction for my life for that day. But I have never had anything like this. This was so clear that I can't even describe the degree of mental clarity. And so after I wrote that last one down, I was like kind of overwhelmed when I wrote down number 11, 6 and then 3 and then 2. And I just in my head said, God, what is going on? I mean, why are you showing me this? Because I'm thinking, this is nothing spiritual. This doesn't seem like the thing that would be a God thing, if he wanted to show you something, you think there'd be a spiritual side to it. And so I'm like, why are you showing me this? And I just was just thinking in my mind, do you want me to write a book or something? And if you wanted me to write a book, what would the title be? And I could not even finish that thought. What would the title be? And it came in a flash, just like the other 11, I'll call them revelations did. And so, the whole title, The Globalist Plan to Collapse Everything to Usher in a New World Order. And I thought, wow, that is like a truth bomb title. You know what I mean? That's a title that's so bold, I wouldn't have come up with it. I wouldn't have thought that. But the fact that that the title came so fast, combined with the incredible clarity of those 11 pillars of society that are under attack, I didn't argue. I didn't try to make excuses. I didn't like, okay, now give me another sign. Are you really sure? It was like, no. I mean, he answered the prayer like immediately. He answered the question immediately. And so, as busy as I was, I thought, okay, I'm going to research these 11 collapse points, I call them, pillars of society that are under attack. I'm just going to research it to find the evidence for it. And I'm going to write about it. And that's how it started. That was late April 2024. I wrote all summer long, kicked it off with 8 nights at the beach to kind of get my head into it, where, uninterrupted by everything. And spent the whole day researching and writing for 8 days. And then every weekend after that, and a lot of evenings, weekday evenings, I completely dove in with both feet. And I finished writing it on September 3rd, and back and forth to the publisher and the editing and all that, and it came out mid-October of last year.
So cool. I love it. As you were writing, did you get any more confirmations or downloads or guidance?
Nothing, nothing to the degree of the initial experience, but I did get some kind of subtle things that in hindsight I felt were like God helping me with it in some way to some degree. And just I forgot to mention one thing, like because it relates to your question that you're asking here. But in this process of having that experience of feeling like God was asking me to write about this, right after I said in my head, "Okay, I'll do it," within a few minutes, I got butterflies in my stomach. Like, I don't know how to write a book. I've never written a book. I've written blog posts. I've written short things, but I've never written a book. I mean, I have an MBA, so I did have to write a 100-page master's thesis. So that was, seems like eons ago. And I'm no longer in college or in that mode of intense study and writing. But yeah, I got butterflies in my stomach, and I thought, in my mind, I just said, "How am I going to do this?" And I sensed an answer that came, and it was, "Write it from the heart, and it will flow." And that was like an incredible comfort to me. That told me that if I just be myself and write from the heart, like lead with the heart instead of the mind, that I would be led through it in some way. And so I decided, you know what, I'm going to be 100% transparent. I'm going to be like the true me is going to come out in how this is written, because I felt like I was just told, in a way, the implication was, you don't have to pretend to be somebody you're not. You don't have to pretend to be some great intellectual. Just write it from the heart and it's going to flow. And one of the things that happened that really made it flow was, as I was doing the research, I kept coming across video after video that was very convincing in a way that written text was not. And I thought, wow, how am I going to, the best part about what I'm researching is actually these videos. How am I going to get that across? And one day, as I'm leaving the house to go to Barnes & Noble to have some getaway time to kind of write, as I'm walking down the sidewalk thinking about that, how am I going to get this across? The idea just kind of flashed in my mind, use QR codes. Like, put the QR codes right in the book. And I'm thinking, yeah, why not? That is the perfect way to get people to go to the videos. And so the book has 170 QR codes. 100 of them are videos, and they're mostly short videos. A couple of them link to full-length documentaries. But so your earlier question about the doubters and people say it's tinfoil hat. Well, this book is documented to a degree probably that no other book is, in the sense that the documentation's accessible. I mean, there may be books with 500 footnotes, but nobody follows up on footnotes.
Right.
I mean, or hardly ever. But, you can read this book with your cell phone at your side and, hover it over a QR code and go right to the proof of what I'm telling you. And you'll hear a lot of these, you'll hear the globalists talking about their plans in their own words. I mean, there's a video in the chapter on the collapse of the banking system, banking and finance, where you will hear bankers talking about how fragile the banking system is, and it's really a good thing not to let the public know about this. It's from one of their meetings, an FDIC meeting in 2023. You'll hear it, and you hear them talking in their own words about this. So it's that kind of thing through the book. I take you right there, and you can make your own decision, but I'm not just claiming things without having the backing.
I love it. I love that you use QR codes. I love that you had the guidance to listen to your heart, let it flow, be authentic. That's exactly what I did when I wrote my book. I published my book last year also. And I also used QR codes. I linked to resources like different episodes and different interviews. But I love that you linked to 100 videos of these politicians and business people who in their own words, are admitting what their plan is. And I've seen some of these videos, and it, like, Bill Gates saying that we need to depopulate the planet, and then he buys up mega amounts of farmland. It's like, what are you up to, Bill? What
Yeah,
are you what are
70
you
million
doing?
acres of Western farmland so he can cut down the trees and bury them in the name of CO2 control. I mean, it's unbelievable. These people are so off the rails, and they're in positions of power, and some of them are billionaires, but they're all in positions of power and influence. And I think we all want to believe the best of everybody, myself included. We don't want to believe that there's people in power who have, I'll just call it evil plans, plans that are not for really what's best for society. It's maybe what's best for them at some level, maybe for their income or some sense of control over others that they're looking for, but it's definitely not the best for mankind. At Yeah, it is pretty amazing when you look at the whole picture, and that's the hard thing really, is to get your arms around the whole picture. But with this book, that's what I try to do. It's not just these 11 collapse points and the proof for what's being done, but it's also an introduction to globalism. What is globalism? Who are the globalists? What are they trying to accomplish? And what have they accomplished so far along the way on these 11 collapse points? And then on the other end of the book, on the back end, it's saying, okay, what do we do about it? How can we prepare? How can we push back? And how can we be at peace in the midst of all this mayhem that they're trying to cause? I mean, I'm sure your viewers come from, every walk of society in terms of, the political spectrum. What I try to do in the book is I try to ignore the politics and just go right to the actions. I don't care what letter they have behind their name, whether it's an R or a D or an I, an independent. I don't care about that. All I care about is what actions are being taken, and is that good or bad, And we saw with the southern border, anybody who followed it closely, and that was one of the most alarming things to me, is the millions of unvetted people coming across that border. I mean, never before in the history of the world, at least in the history of the U.S., have we ever let this volume of people in without checking them. I mean, yes, we're a nation of immigrants. Ellis Island, everybody had to have a job that they were going to. They had to have people to support them. They had to be healthy. I mean, people were turned away. It was a very organized form of immigration, and it was massive. And we still allow more people into our country legally than any country in the world. That's who we are, a nation of immigrants. But just the fact that this was happening in an uncontrolled way, just a reckless way, and at alarming rates. To me, that was such a red flag that nobody could be this stupid, nobody could be this inept, no government could be this inept, and so that means it's intentional. And then once you get to it's intentional, then you have to ask why. But then you have to also look at where else it's happening, and that's what the research showed, is this was happening at scale in Europe before it ever happened in America, and it's continuing at scale in Europe. So this is a coordinated effort to bring down the Western society, even including Australia, which technically they're not in the West physically, but they're part of Western society, and they're having the same immigration problems that we were having and still are feeling the effects of. But it's a worldwide effort, and all of these 11 collapse points are pretty much worldwide efforts. So that's what's so eye-opening about it. But again, you have to link to the QR codes, to get the proof, and hopefully for a lot of people who have the courage to do that, take a look at it and just keep an open mind, see what you think.
Back in 2005, I was introduced to a lecture online about Codex Alimentarius. Do you know about that?
I couldn't quite hear that. About what?
Codex Alimentarius.
No.
So it's this sort of started unfolding my belief system, like government's generally good and trying to help us. And, this started to like disintegrate that, this idea. So Codex Alimentarius started in somewhere around after World War I believe. And it was an agenda to have every country under one rule, like you say, New World Order. Codex Alimentarius just means food code. It's a 15,000 page book, and so for the first few hundred pages, it looks like a pretty good. Like, hot dogs should be stored at this temperature, and eggs should be stored at this temperature. But then when you get into it, it actually makes like all the healthy things like acupuncture and supplements illegal and controlled by the government, controlled by pharmaceutical companies. Like only pharmaceutical companies can make, these healthy things, right? And it gets really creepy the deeper you go into it. But it is about controlling the food supply and controlling our access to health choices. And they tried to get each country to join it under the UN, under the World Health Organization. And those countries that resisted were attacked in certain ways by the UN. It's a little hard for me to explain it, but I've saw it, and it was just, I've watched it unfold since 2005, and it's very interesting to me to see like how we try to not they try to get countries to sign this as a treaty so it supersedes the laws of the country. And it's part of controlling not only our food supply, but our access to healthy supplements and herbs and homeopathy and other healing modalities. So I want to dive into that topic because and I think all the pillars I definitely want to go through just at least an understanding of what all 11 collapse points are. But from the food point, I'd love to focus on that. So what is going on that we really, really need to be aware of? Because I think we largely are unconscious. We just have a lot of trust. We think that just because it's in a store, it's safe to eat. There's an ingredient list, and they wouldn't poison us. They wouldn't put anything bad in our food, and so we just kind of blindly trust that if it tastes good, it's good for you. And meanwhile, people are getting sicker and sicker. And especially children are getting sicker and sicker, diabetes and juvenile diabetes, juvenile arthritis, juvenile cancers, and obesity is just, continuing to rise because we're poisoning our children with a poisoned food supply. So we have to be very diligent. But even when you buy produce, who owns those farms? What are they spraying it with? Or are they remineralizing the soil? Or are they doing anything to really make it nutritious? Or is this just completely void of nutrition? Is our produce void of nutrition, just depending on where it comes from? So I'd love to dive into that so that people can become aware of, well, what do they need to look for? What questions do they need to start asking? And what can they do to protect their family as much as possible?
Yeah, that's a great question. In the book, there's another collapse point that actually ties into the food supply, but it's the environment. Collapse number 7 is the environment, but the chapter focuses on the environment in two ways. One is the food supply itself, the quality of the food supply, and the environment that's affecting that food supply. And then the other is the air and what's in the air itself. But getting to the food supply itself, one of the things the book talks about is the use of toxic herbicides such as glyphosate. That's become the norm for how we clear our crops rather than plowing them under as we used to in past decades. And this glyphosate has been linked to cancer, according to the World Health Organization. And yet, in the U.S., just a staple for the U.S. agricultural process. And there's chemicals and particulates that have been dispersed into the atmosphere for decades via these chemtrails, we call them. It's not the scientific name for it, but there's a link in the book to a video called The Dimming. An organization called geoengineeringwatch.org created the documentary that you can connect to in the book through the QR code. And what they did is they took a NOAA aircraft up into that into a chemtrail, and basically, they have the instruments to be able to basically scoop the atmosphere into a container that gets pulled into the plane. So they captured the contents of a chemtrail, and they found extremely toxic levels of barium, strontium, and aluminum. And aluminum in particular is harmful not only to mammals, including humans, of course, but also to plant life. So what is happening, and I know this is a hard one to accept. I used to be a total doubter. As somebody said chemtrail to me, in my head, I'm thinking tinfoil hat. I don't believe it. And it's kind of crazy because we can all look and see the lines going across our sky. I mean, on a bad day, it's like a checkerboard in some places, right? Mm-hmm. We have been brainwashed. We have just been lulled into thinking that this is just condensation trails. But it's not just condensation trails, because it's almost impossible for a jet engine to produce a condensation trail. So that's one of the big lies. Barium, strontium, aluminum. And this is raining down on us all the time. It's affecting the soil itself. It's affecting the biology of the soil, so that we have to use more and more fertilizer, because the natural bacteria and fungi and everything that's in the soil are dying off from this constant, layering of these chemicals. And so, glyphosate, like I said, has been linked to cancer. These chemtrails, basically the system of spraying particulates out into the atmosphere, is being done by countries all over the world. It's not just a U.S. thing. It's pretty much a worldwide thing. And it's just hard to believe, really, that it's allowed to happen. And it's just now that with RFK Jr., he said he's going to take a look at that. I mean, thank God. But we talk about things like GMO crops also in the book, genetically modified organisms. So, they're modified with antibiotic-resistant genes. And these plants are bioengineered to tolerate the herbicides. So we're spraying glyphosate to kill weeds, but it doesn't kill the plant because the plant's engineered to resist it. And so, trace elements, traces of those herbicides get into our food. And there's an article by a man named Dr. Berg. He talks about the herbicides and the health risks that they pose to humans include increased cancer risk, hormone imbalances, liver issues, and digestive problems. And also, it refers to the International Journal of Molecular Sciences has confirmed the toxic effects of herbicides on the central nervous system. So he calls it like a genetically modified time bomb waiting to happen. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're looking at. I almost after seeing the evidence, if you go to geoengineeringwatch.org and click on the video, The Dimming, you will be shocked at what you find. And I don't think anyone, after watching that video, would ever see chemtrails the same way again. It's alarming.
I have a really good interview I just want to direct listeners to on learning more about GMO. And I just think everyone really needs to know. Don't put your head in the sand. Don't ignore it. You need to understand it so that you can support your family, because choosing non-GMO foods is incredibly important to your health. It's episode 133 with Jeffrey Smith, and he dives into how GMOs are impacting your health, like you said, for generations, how they're harming your genes. They're also hijacking your gut microbiome. I have several interviews about how important, crucial to your health is your gut microbiome. It's thousands of hopefully healthy bacteria and microbes, about 6 pounds. So think about the size of a chihuahua is like
Wow.
an animal living inside you. And you are actually, this is kind of creepy, but you as a human are more bacterial cells than you are human cells. So just remember, like, there's more not you in you
Yeah.
and of you that supports you.
You're like your
That
own rainforest, right? There's all
Yeah,
kinds of things
exactly.
growing in there.
Yeah, no, you have a
Oh my
garden of
gosh.
and soil. Like we used to think soil was sort of dead. Soil is alive with bacteria that help us to digest and break down our food. Not only help to digest and break down, but it also our gut microbiome that we get from the soil, right? So we want a healthy living soil, and we want to eat a certain amount of raw fruits and vegetables, because it inoculates our gut with these microbes, these healthy, life-sustaining microbes that not only help to break down the food, but they actually convert our food to chemicals like short-chain fatty acids that the body absorbs and that it heals the body. And it helps to dampen the flame of inflammation. And it helps to actually helps us crave healthier foods. It hijacks the brain in a good way and makes us enjoy foods that heal our body more. But it does so many good things for us, this gut microbiome. And when we don't have it, chaos reigns. Well, here's the thing. GMOs hijack and just like the mRNA vaccine made your body produce something, like artificially made your body produce something, GMO foods do the same thing to your gut microbiome. They hijack their DNA or their RNA or whatever, and they hijack them to produce chemicals that are harmful to us. And so Jeffrey Smith on the episode 133 does a really good job going into the science of that. And so I just wanted to point that out. And then Dr. Rima Libo was the video I saw, back in 2005. It's still on YouTube. People have like broken it up into pieces, but it's over 40 minutes long. So just search for Dr. Rima Libo, Codex Alimentarius, and try to find the longest video you can and watch it. I know it's so old now when you think about back in, like, she published it, I think 2004 or earlier, but it is talking about the history. And so now we can actually see, now going back and looking at that, we can actually see what she predicted would play out. And we can actually see some of what she predicted has played out, which is equally creepy. When you talk about the chemtrails, my husband and I used to live in Las Vegas. And when I first moved there, we would get 6 months or more with not a cloud in the sky. And I became sick of sunlight. I became so sick of sunlight because it was just always sunny. And I thought, man, I miss clouds. I miss rain. It was just sunny all the time. And so for several years, as we lived there, there would be, the rain season was around March, and that we naturally get some clouds between like maybe December and March. But other than that, it was sunny all the time. And then all of a sudden, there were chemtrails, and they weren't contrails, these tiny little puffs, lines that would, like maybe an inch, right? If you're looking up at a plane way high up, there'd be like a little tiny line that would disappear. These lines would checkerboard the sky,
Yeah.
and then it would become hazy. And the next day, our car would be covered in a metallic dust. And I would wake up with a metallic taste in my mouth.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I was like, oh, this is weird. But the car would be covered. Now, it had never been covered before. And it wasn't like there was a dust storm. And it wasn't just like it was dusty or dirty. Like, we'd go get a car wash. And the next day after these chemtrails, it would be covered in this weird metallic, like you touch it. And it's like, that looks like fine metal. It was so weird.
Exactly.
And then there were chevrons in the sky. And we thought, this is crazy. And one of our friends who was not 100% not into any conspiracies at all. He like, the government's good, everything's fine. But he used to work in the military in like air traffic control. And we said, is there a reason why every plane we're seeing these planes aren't landing in Vegas, they're flying over us, but they're all of them are making the chevron. They're all flying in one direction, then turning almost a 90-degree angle, and then flying in another direction over and over again, making these lines. And he looks up and he goes, there's no reason. There's zero reason why they should be doing that. And we've watched for years. We watched the airplanes above Las Vegas, and they'd never had to do that. And all of a sudden, they're making these chevrons, and then of course, then these big clouds would form if you watch them, right?
Yeah.
And that's when we started to look into it, because we're like, what is going on? And our friend came from, she used to work at the University of Toronto, and we were telling her about this, like this weird metallic stuff on our car, and there's weird chevrons in the sky, checkerboards sometimes. And she goes, she just looks at us like we we should know this, right? Like we're idiots. And she goes, it's called geoengineering, and it's been patented since the 40s.
That's right.
And we're like, what? And she goes, look up the patents. They've had this technology since the 40s. Like, you didn't know this? Like, they do it for agriculture and whatever. But now we're seeing these mass floods happening in areas that it's very unusual to have mass floods, like Dubai, which they have admitted they're doing cloud seeding.
Right.
And just this week, we've had several really sad and scary mass floods, like in New Mexico, and their government, the New Mexico state government, has a state bill that they passed for cloud seeding for the next 3 years to combat drought, but they're not controlling it accurately, and now they're getting these floods that are killing people. So it's, when you look at it from the standpoint of, well, we're trying to combat drought, and it's a good thing, because if we can control the weather, we can help people, we can grow more food, right? And then we look at it from the standpoint of like, well, they are poisoning us with barium, strontium, and aluminum, and what else is being sprayed on us? And well, why did Bill Gates invest in a company that is designed to block out the sun and lessen the amount of sun we get when we need sunlight for our plants to grow, our food supply to grow?
Exactly. This is the hardest of all, and I even hesitate to say it, because I know that some people will be like, all right, that's it, this guy's nuts. But really what all this points to, and there's plenty of research on this too if you really want to go there, but in the long run, really what they're looking for is population control, and what that really means is population reduction. And like I said, that is the hardest one to accept. But there's plenty of evidence, including, things in their own words that they've stated. Again, just go back to the TED Talk with Bill Gates, where he lists 3 factors that come into play if we are talking about the population. And in that TED Talk, which you can get the link to right in the book, he says that, if we do a really good job with vaccines, among other things, he makes a list, he includes vaccines, we may be able to reduce the world population by, and I think he said 15%. It's either 10 or 15%. But that shows that his mind is on reducing the world population, and vaccines being one way to help accomplish that. But, you can go back decades and decades to, major globalist publications like The Limits to Growth. They're all about limiting population growth, or decreasing the population to make it manageable, in their eyes, manageable. And the disturbing thing is they have the power to do it, because they have the money and they have the control. The government control. If governments are going along with this, or at least to the extent that they are, we're in trouble. I mean, why is it just now that at the government level, someone is finally pushing back in a big way on GMO and on the chemtrails. That's RFK Jr. Why is it just now? And how long has it been this way? There's a lot of people who are of the same mind that, there's just too many of us here on this planet and we need to do something about it. So, yeah, that's the hardest one to accept. But if you look into it, it kind of helps everything else tie together.
So tell us about, maybe give us the big picture. Tell us about the 11 collapse points. And then I really do want to get into what actionable steps we can take to protect ourselves and even fight back. Because, some people feel the calling of, activism and wanting to fight back. And some people just want to protect their families. So I'd love to just give resources and tools to the listener. But what are these 11 collapse points that were given to you that you got to download from, that when we see them in whole, I feel like we can see the big picture of what's going on.
Sure. So in the book, I list them in the order of, I think, what are the most obvious ones at first, or let's say the easiest ones to prove. I wouldn't call them obvious because not everybody would agree with that. But I start with the ones that are easiest to prove, and I get to the ones toward the end that are harder to accept. But here they are in order from 1 to 11. National borders. These are, again, things that the globalists want to collapse or bring down or weaken. All right, so national borders. Number 2, security and police protection. 3 is privacy. 4 is banking and finance. 5 is education. 6 is energy. 7, the environment. 8, medical system. 9, food supply. 10, self-identity. And 11 is faith itself.
Wow.
Yeah, and these are all things that are required. You could call them systems or whatever that are required to sustain a complex, free society, and that's important. Complex and free, and that's why I was kind of surprised with 10 and 11 that morning, self-identity and faith, because they're different from the other 9. But they're basically about human character, human conviction, understanding who we are, and also understanding who we are in relation to God. Number 11 with faith there. But yeah, these things are all being worked on, and to bring them down. And that was in those moments where I was having that experience. Again, I was seeing this like with extreme clarity that things were being done to bring them down, and but the sense was collapse. The sense was like an intended collapse, and the sense was also that they're in different phases. They're not all at the same degree of degradation, let's say, but they're all being worked on systematically.
Who are these, people globally that are coming together to try to do this to every country? It seems like such a, again, playing the devil's advocate, right? It
Sure.
seems like it almost seems far-fetched because this was explained to me by a friend. He goes, how could 9/11 be an inside job or be, something more than what the official story is? Because we a government couldn't do that, or a government organization couldn't do that because, have you ever been to the DMV? Like, look how disorganized that is. And he basically, says, well, if the government is any reflection of the DMV, if you ever tried to go get your driver's license or anything, it's like no one cares. It's all, bureaucrats. No one cares. And it's very chaotic and just disorganized and slow. And so he goes, how could you possibly think that a bunch of, government people behind the scenes could orchestrate something, right? Could pull off something like this. And then you think about like a global agenda. How could they possibly? And I thought that was a interesting fallacy to look at through the lens of like, well, because the DMV means that there's no way any government or any group of people could pull off, these complex things. But this is how the front end of governments just look like a bunch of people just kind of droning on and not really, not getting far fast, right? Especially when you look at construction, like we've got this light rail in Seattle and it's years behind, and they're pouring so much money into it, and it's just the construction is years and years behind its schedule. And so when we look at it from that standpoint, we just couldn't believe that this could all be collaborated and well organized, right? So who are these people, this society, the secret society that's attacking us on all these fronts?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, and I've had this conversation with other people too. And so people that study this, there's, I don't want to say there's disagreement, although there is disagreement, but everybody's trying to figure it out, like who's really at the top, who's really pulling the strings. And I think the problem is the people who are at the very top, we're not going to know because they want it that way. But there are major organizations that are building blocks to world control, and we can certainly see information from them if we look for it. And so just the big picture pieces of the puzzle are number one, the United Nations, because that is a central, like a centrally controlled power that's all about, trying to get world governments to act in concert with each other. So you go to the UN and then you break down the UN agencies. You look at like the World Health Organization, and you look at the kind of things they're trying to achieve. Like they're trying to be able to dictate the response to pandemics. All over the world, exactly how is a pandemic handled? What shot do you take? And everybody takes it and nobody opts out. That would be the way they want to operate based on their own words, But you also look at the World Economic Forum. That's another major piece. The World Economic Forum, which had been until recently led by Klaus Schwab, right? And he wrote a book called The Great Reset, or the Great Reset. And the Great Reset is really what they want to do is reset the world. And the way you reset the world, and they won't say it, they won't come out and say it, but the way you reset the world is to collapse the system you have so that you can bring in the new system on the ashes of the old system being taken down. We kind of got a little bit of a hint of that during the COVID crisis. Mm-hmm. I mean, how top-down, tyrannical that whole thing felt, especially in certain states where the governors piled on and got really tyrannical, like in New Jersey, probably California. I mean, the tendency is, create a crisis, create a lot of fear, and through that fear get people to get in line and do what they're told. And so what they were trying to do is everybody gets a shot and everybody gets on the schedule for shots, and you better do it or you're going to lose your job. And if you're a doctor, you better not push back or we're going to, yank your license. I mean, we're far enough beyond that time that the memory of it starts to fade. But if we go back and really think about how intimidating that time was, the level of control that was being forced upon us, it seems like, wow, how did they ever do that? And remember, they did this throughout the world, throughout at least the Western world. It was all being done at the same time. And, the doctors were incentivized to call any form of cold or the flu, to call it COVID, to classify it as COVID. They were incentivized with real money, big money, to do this. The hospital's the same way. So if you think it can't happen, just think back to that. And it was on a small scale happening then. And, it was Florida coming out and saying, we're not doing this. We're opening up our businesses. We're allowing people to get out. They've gradually, the thing with the masks was rolled back. But if it wouldn't been for our system of it's called our federal system, where each state gets to have a certain amount of autonomy. If we didn't have that autonomy at the state level, where governors could push back and start, not going along with the plan, if it wouldn't be for that, it would have been a lot more coercive. But that kind of pointed out the lie, right? That Florida was bucking the system, and yet even though they had such a high percentage of really old people who should be dying faster, right? It should be hitting Florida harder than any other state, really, if you look at the population and the average age. But yet it wasn't. They didn't have any worse results, and they had better results actually than some states. And so. Just getting back to it, though, that's an example of how this top-down control can work if everybody gets in line, if everybody believes, like Dr. Fauci, let's say, and he's claiming to be the science, and he's part of, the NIH or the CDC, and it's being dictated. But people tend to fall in line. So what they're looking to do through the World Economic Forum, the UN, is basically what we talked about before. You roll up all this power so that they get to decide, they get to dictate, and they have the ability to to bring things down to an extent if they want to. But another layer beyond the World Economic Forum and the UN, another layer is the banking system, and I'm surprised that there's still a lot of people that don't understand that our Federal Reserve is not like a U.S. agency. It's not even technically a U.S. government organization. It's an independent banking system that's part of the same banking system that's the banking system of Europe under another name, like the European Central Bank. There's the Bank of Japan. There's these families, these banking families that basically own the highest level elements of the banking system throughout the world. And those are very powerful globalists that have the power to, fund wars, fund both sides of a war. They have the power to change the interest rates so everything gets expensive. It gets harder to borrow. I mean, they have an incredible amount of leverage, but it's when you look at the control and who's behind it, you always have to ask, where's the money? Follow the money. That's a pretty good guide. And near the top of the pyramid is the banking system itself, and then another element is the large corporations of the world that it turns out are pretty much owned by the same people when you roll it up high enough. There's a chapter in the book, or a part of a chapter, that says who owns the world, and it takes you through an exercise where you're being shown in live time using Yahoo Finance, where you research who owns this company, who owns that company, who owns Coke, who owns Pepsi, who owns Boeing, who owns Airbus. And you find that the same companies have controlling interest in both in all the big players, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's the other huge element. Once you roll it up high enough, you find that there's Vanguard, BlackRock, and State Street that are the three largest corporations in the world that own most of the controlling interest in most of the other corporations. And you roll it up high enough, and you find that Vanguard owns the other ones. But when you get into Vanguard, you can't know who owns Vanguard because their policy, they are set up in such a way that they protect the identity of their investors. So a short answer would be whoever owns controlling interest in Vanguard owns the world, and they're at the top of the power pyramid, but that's, the globalists have been talking a long time about their goals and about population control and about basically bringing in a one system of government that controls the entire world. Like John Kerry said in his commencement address to Northeastern University a few years ago, you are going to graduate into a borderless world. And why would he say that? It's because he's part of Team Globalist. He knows the goal. He knows where it's going. And the World Economic Forum on their website, has a video, unless it's been taken down, but they have a video that says it's 2030, you own nothing, and you'll be happy. So, if you wonder why things feel like they're getting a little out of control and shaky, not just the war in Ukraine, but just the whole things with the riots in 2020, with the BLM riots, and why in the world would anybody allow cities to burn and nobody goes to jail, and that's just out of control. They're trying to destabilize the world. Trying to destabilize Europe, America, Australia, Canada, mostly what we call the Western world. They're trying to destabilize it, take it down, and that is their goal. They own everything by 2030, and we don't own it. And in some sick way, they think we're going to be happy. But, their goals really are in writing. The thing is, we don't take them seriously because we can't imagine it could be true. But they take it seriously, and they're working toward it. And I'm just grateful that at this time in history, we have a federal government that's pushing back in the U.S. against these kind of plans. And, in my opinion, it's an exciting time to be alive. It's also a dangerous time in ways that a lot of people don't really quite understand, because they've seen hints of it, but it's easy to ignore it. But there's a lot on the line right now.
I'm glad you brought up that quote by the World Economic Forum, because that it's a meme that floats around. You will own nothing and be happy, and it's part of Agenda 2030. And
right.
When you talk about Agenda 2030, like if tell people more about Agenda 2030, they will think you're crazy. I have a friend who regularly tells people about Agenda 2030, and it's like so many people just don't want to talk to him anymore because they think he's crazy. And all he's doing is quoting what is on the World Economic Forum's website, which is under the UN, right? So it's like, these are real organizations. These are out there. These are their goals for all of society, for the entire earth. And when you start quoting their goals and what they're working towards, you sound like a whack job.
Sure.
Which is just like, how crazy is that it's right in front of us, but we don't believe it. We can't believe it. You brought up red dye and how it's petroleum based. I have 2 amazing interviews about exposing these food additives, that there's zero benefit and there's only negatives. Making your food look slightly more appealing, like is not going to help you nutritionally when you're consuming a lab-made petroleum-based product that crosses the blood-brain barrier, increases cancer rates, and hijacks your nervous system. It actually increases suicide and depression and many other emotional and mental regulatory issues. These food additives need to go. And this is just one small example of how they're controlling us, poisoning us. And, I could be on my conspiracy soapbox and say they're all doing it on purpose and they have this big agenda and they're doing it by design. And a lot of people go, well, maybe it's just because it's just for profits. Like maybe they're not, maybe they didn't know that they made this stuff, we want our food to look more red, look more colorful, look more, appealing because we want to sell it. And then they didn't know it caused harm. And then they already kind of invested in this system of doing it this way. And then they found out maybe it causes harm to some people, but it would cost us more money to stop doing it the way we're doing it. So we're just going to keep doing it. Okay. Either way, either sort of viewpoint, right? Either people are sort of just like got this huge agenda, right? Or it's all profit driven. Either way, the outcome is they are harming us. And so we have to educate ourselves around our food supply. so that we can protect ourselves, because our food supply and everything is a for-profit industry, right? So in Canada, I'm originally from Canada. I live in the States now. In Canada, our healthcare system, which is the term healthcare is an absolute joke.
Right.
It is, in America too, right? The term healthcare, like you've got to get, this is Orwellian language, and George Orwell is rolling in his grave. I think everyone should read 1984, because the languaging they use, words shape your reality, and the language they use is very specific and important to shape your reality. So our healthcare system, which is a disease management and disease creating and managing system, in Canada is for profit in that they look to save money. So, for example, they're not going to take more than 2 X-rays. If they absolutely, they'll take as many X-rays as they need, but they're not going to take any more than they need. And so they'll do bare minimum to save money, right? To save resources, right? So if there's an elected surgery, you're going to be bumped off by a few months, or they're going to reject it. They're going to say, no, you can't have this elected surgery. And in the States, it's because it's for profit. It's equally as harmful to us, because again, the goal of keeping you and helping you achieve optimal health and keeping you in optimal health is never the goal. It's never the goal, because it's either in the countries around the world, it's either the government is trying to save money, not keep you healthy necessarily, but save money, or the industry is trying to profit from you, not profit from you being healthy. And same with the food chain. The food chain is about making money, not making you healthy. Dr. Joel Wallach, one of my mentors who saved my life, I was incredibly sick, and he helped me to overcome major illnesses. He helped me overcome, within months, a polycystic ovarian syndrome, infertility, like a lifelong infertility, and chronic adrenal fatigue, incredibly bad chronic adrenal fatigue, and diabetes. He helped me overcome these using nutrition, food, and proper supplements, not just like store-bought, but like very, very high quality, to fill in the nutrient gaps, because our food chain is damaged, is on purpose, is missing key elements for your health, especially minerals. It's completely deplete of minerals and has been for a while. And so he showed me how we can support our health in that way, because he grew up as a farmer. He saw that, and this totally opened my eyes when I was 12, actually, because I heard his health lecture when I was 12, and then found him later in life.
Wow.
Or God brought him back to me later in life to help me.
There you go.
And then he ended up being my mentor. But when I was 12, I heard on tape, I heard his health lecture, and he said, on the farm, we give calves supplements. We give animals all the nutrition they need to prevent disease, to keep costs down. And then we feed it to the humans, right? Feed humans the food, but we don't ever tell humans to supplement, to make sure they're getting all the nutrients that the calf is getting. The calf is fed better in terms of amount of nutrients than you are.
True. Oh my gosh.
And not all these nutrients, make it to your plate, by the way. But we've known for years, for over 80 years, we've known in the farming industry, in animal husbandry, that if we want to prevent illness, we make sure the animal has all the nutrients it needs. And humans don't. We don't, because it is the farming industry is not designed to make sure that the plants are fully nutrified, that they're full of all the minerals you need. The system is not designed to keep you healthy. It's designed to make a profit. So if they can just throw some artificial fertilizer on there and be good, like you can grow hydroponically, for example, you could grow leafy greens, right? Mm-hmm. And spinach. There is 0 iron in that spinach. It's grown hydroponically. It can look like spinach, but it doesn't have to have any minerals in it, because the minerals weren't in the soil or weren't in the water.
Yeah.
So we're very anemic. Our soil's anemic. Our food is anemic. We're missing nutrients. That's why I highly recommend listeners go to takeyoursupplements.com. That's the supplements that Dr. Wallach helped me to regain my health. And they also actually sell special minerals for the garden that you can add back to your, if you have a garden, which I recommend everyone. If you have a plot of land, if you even have 5x5 land, even a front yard, start growing your own food. Potatoes are the easiest to grow. You just like literally throw potatoes in the ground, and then one potato makes 12 more potatoes. But having and get your friends and family to all grow a garden, and everyone can like choose a different vegetable, and then you all share. But and have, if you eat eggs, have backyard chickens. If you can do it, if you can support a friend to do it, or a family or a neighbor to do it, do it, because the more that you control your food supply, the better. So that's my that's my little thing about the food supply. But what steps can people take? I really want to empower the listeners. Like what can we look for? What actions can we take? What homework can we do? And how can we empower them to stay healthy when the global elites are literally trying to whack us off and decrease the population?
Yeah, well, I think you really mentioned a lot of the key things. Is growing your own food and just trying to get outside of the standard big agri system to the degree you're able to. I mean, we have backyard chickens, and we eat eggs every day, literally almost every day, and probably the medical system will tell you that's not really a good thing to do. You shouldn't eat so many eggs, but they're packed with nutrients, and so we don't really have a whole lot of faith in a system that gave us a food pyramid that they only later admitted was totally upside down. But yeah, I mean, getting control, getting outside of their system any way that you can is a good thing. Of course, local farming, organic farming, buying from those farmers, being sure that it really is organic to the extent that you're able to prove it, I think is so key. Um, I always read food labels. I'm sure you do too, but it's getting hard to be anywhere in the center of the grocery store and pick up a box and look on it and not see contains a bioengineered food ingredient. Almost everything does. And it's crazy how they kind of list it down below the ingredients. It's never at the end of the list of ingredients. It's always down like an inch in its own little area on the box, so you could easily miss it. But on all these things, it's really it comes down to decentralization, and looking within your family, within your community, within our state and federal government, rolling it all the way up. The principles are pretty much the same: decentralize, get back to nature, break it down so that control is at the most local level that it can be. Including the education, including your medical system, your food supply. It all really comes down to that decentralizing, because the globalists always want to centralize. They always want to roll it up so they can control it from the top and achieve their absolute level of control that they're all about. As far as the medical system, it's really, I mean, you would know that far better than me. It's all the things that you talk about. Holistic medicine, naturopathic medicine. I mean, the book gets into a section on how did we come to have the medical system that we do now, and with the whole John D. Rockefeller basically taking over the medical system because he was an oil tycoon and he introduced the pharmaceutical way of doing everything, which is, I never knew pharmaceuticals were almost all petroleum based until I researched it. I thought, are you kidding me? When I pop a pill, I'm popping petroleum, So, it was in his interest to create the pharmaceutical industry and the kind of industry that exists today to back that, and to do away with all the naturopathic medicines, to basically almost make them illegal at the time. To create only one way to license doctors, the American Medical Association, and to eliminate all the other certifications, pretty much. to take over all the schools. So there's only one way you learn, and that's the system we have now. And again, it seems like every time they try to centralize it, they ruin it. They ruin everything they centralize. I mean, you look at the education system the same way, Common Core, it's just anything but what's best for the country. It just seems like that's what they're all about when they roll it up the way they do.
I got into the concept of homeschooling years before we ended up having our son. He's 10 now, and we've been homeschooling him and love it. Absolutely love it. I wish I was homeschooled, just the way I see children thrive. I've created a community of over 500 homeschooling moms in
Wow.
my area.
Nice.
That are like-minded. And we do regular meetups, and I mean, obviously not all 500 at once. We usually get, like when we do field trips, we'll get between 30 and 60 of us. But we do a monthly field trip, and then we do weekly play dates at parks. And it's fascinating when you step outside of the mainstream system. Like for me, I stepped outside of the mainstream medical system years ago and took a look inward. But when you're in it, you have this cognitive dissonance to want to trust it and to not want to have your reality shattered.
Exactly.
Because it's too painful. Like it's too painful to think that the system isn't perfect. It isn't going to save you if you had a heart attack, right? Or if you the system, it's just we give it a savior complex almost. We give the government and the medical industry and the food industry, we give it all sort of the savior complex, like they're parents. As adults, it's hard because we want to go back to when we're kids and we just, our parents are our protectors and we have them on pedestals, and we just want to shut off our brains and have someone tell us what to do and take care of us, because that is so much easier than adulthood when we have to decide what we're going to cook for the family 3 times a day and just be responsible for so many facets of life, and making all the decision making and all the weighing of options and all the pulling in of information. We want to just trust that these systems are out there for our good. So it's painful. It's almost like a birth, in a sense, that you are being reborn when you come out of it and you look inward and you go, wow, this is I trusted this thing, and I almost like dogmatically believed in it, right?
Yes.
We have this kind of unhealthy faith in the government and in these systems. But when we look at the history of them, we see how much they've betrayed us. Right?
They have totally betrayed us, and the sad thing is a lot of it's on purpose too. It's not all well intended, or just let's just say it's not all just incompetence and greed. It's worse than that. And the book starts off. The book is very fast paced and hard hitting, and I just want to get right on the inside cover are quotes from 2 CIA directors. All right. And if you think about these quotes, they kind of frame everything. They show you the real intent. And the first one is William Casey, CIA director from 1981 to 87. He said, quote, "We'll know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American public believes is false." William Casey. Yep, everything the public believes is false. That is how they define success of their disinformation program. And then another CIA director, just to prove this isn't a one-off deranged CIA director, William Colby, 1973 to 76, quote, "The Central Intelligence Agency owns everyone of any significance in the major media." Okay, so we own the media, and our goal is disinformation. So we can control that. We can spread that disinformation through the media. That's pretty much what they're saying. And so we wonder why we get so much bad information, so much false information. at the top, there's people who really want it that way. And it's very hard to accept, like you're saying, we want to believe everything the government does is for our benefit. And there's a lot of good people who do want that in the government. But there's people at the top of a lot of these organizations historically who don't want that. And at some point, we have to be brave enough to set aside our normalcy bias and look clear-eyed at the evidence and not make excuses for it anymore, and that's a hard step to take. But that was kind of my journey. I'm like, because of the research in the book, I'm beyond the point where I take anything at face value without looking a little closer. And I think unfortunately, that's kind of where we have to be. And all the things you're saying about the medical industry, we just pretty much need to apply that to all the big things in life, and don't take it at face value. Believe for the best, but do the research and make sure. Trust but verify is probably too generous. It's like, don't trust, verify, and then trust maybe. So. Yeah.
It's like the movie They Live. Do you remember that? There's a really great 1988 film, and I just loved it. And it's this guy gets a hold of these glasses that let him see the aliens that are among us and all of this subliminal control. It's kind of a like a sci-fi George Orwell movie. It's great, but it's so relevant when you study linguistics.
Mm-hmm.
So I became a master practitioner and trainer of neurolinguistic programming. And when you study linguistics, like, you can go into the trivium and the quadrivium. So trivium education, it's a website. It's free. I think it's triviumeducation.com or .org or something like that. But it's been around for a really long time. And just study the trivium. It's a 2,500-year-old way of critical thinking that they systematically took out of the education system about 100 years ago.
Wow.
When they developed the Prussian education system, for America, maybe it's a bit more than 100 years ago, but it's in the last 100 years, they've really done an effort to take out critical thinking. Mm-hmm. But critical thinking was taught for, almost 2,500 years. And this is a system of linguistics that when you learn it and you just start studying it, start studying the different fallacies, the linguistic fallacies, you're going to hear them everywhere, and you're especially going to hear politicians use them. Mm-hmm. They use language patterns to control and manipulate your belief system, your thought process, your focus, so they can keep you in fear. They can keep you focusing on, it's sort of like a puppeteer or like a magician, like, look over here, look so you don't see the strings, or look over here so you don't, see what I'm doing, right?
Yeah.
Anytime there's a big weird thing in the news, I see my friends go, because I've got great friends. They go, well, what's really happening that they're kind of doing this big news thing that they're trying to cover up? And usually there's more times than not, it's that they're passing some kind of bill and that they don't want it to be the headline news. And they're passing something really important's going on, but then they throw out this other news thing, like, I don't know, like, Trump got a dog, like, oh, everyone talk about this or whatever. Trump doesn't like dogs, or like, well, they'll just make some, and all of a sudden every news outlet's like, all they're talking about is this stupid thing.
Right.
And then
something else is going on.
Yeah. And then like look at page 3 and then you find out like, oh, well, they just passed this thing that like now chemtrails are legal or whatever. Like every time there's something really weird in the news that everyone can't stop talking about, it's usually they're trying to slip some stuff in. And it's kind of like, who's controlling this? Like, who's orchestrating this? It's really crazy. But listen to the linguistics of how they say things. Especially, like I said, especially the politicians, and when you watch the 100 videos that are linked in your book, listen through the lens or through the filters of the linguistics, so that there's like 40 linguistic fallacies, and the way they do presuppositions, they're using language to control you, and that is such a powerful tool to give you, because then between that and follow the money, whenever you're doing research, just follow the money. You will you'll be able to go, okay, I'm avoiding that over there, and I'm going to definitely do this over here. I think they overplayed their hand during COVID. Seeing like churches are illegal, but riots in the streets that are killing people. That people in Portland were dragged out of their cars. Their cars were set on fire, and they were killed. And this was not like, and we were, and the media was praising it like as a peaceful protest. I'm like, peaceful.
Yeah.
Like I live in Seattle,
mostly
and it's
peaceful, except for all those buildings burning in the background there. Yeah.
right. But people's lives were destroyed, businesses were destroyed, property was destroyed, and it was anarchy and chaos and violence, and hundreds and hundreds of people in close proximity to each other. That's fine, but 20 people getting together, spaced 6 feet apart in a church parking lot to worship was illegal. Or like getting together, a few people getting together in a church was illegal, but these hundreds of people in protests were illegal, or were legal. Anyways. And then one state over, there's no laws and everything's fine, and the COVID rates weren't really going up that much, and so I think they did overplay their hand. But the amount of control we felt and the amount of oppression we felt was palpable. And in terms of our health, our mental health is directly impacted by that. And mental health, affects your physical health. We had suicide rates go up. We had alcoholism and drug use go up tremendously. So we need to protect and have some safeguards for our families, for ourselves and our families, that we install. So when these controlled events occur in the future, we have a buffer. So okay, I live in Seattle. There's going to be an earthquake someday, apparently. It's like an earthquake zone for a really big one. And so they say to prepare for the earthquake, have 3 days or 5 days or whatever worth of water and food and emergency supplies and medical supplies. Each family should have a plan, right? An emergency plan. And, if you lived in a hurricane zone, you would have the same thing. You'd have like your get out bags and your hurricane route that you would take to leave. And you just have a plan and you have resources. So we prepare, I think every family, and Mormons are great at this. They have like 2 years worth of stored food, like emergency food in their homes, because that's just part of their culture.
Right.
But,
right.
So we all should have a certain amount of food and water and resources, like a way to filter dirty water. Like if God forbid, if something like Flint, Michigan happened in your town, how are you going to purify your water to save your family? Don't think you can rely on the government and the FEMA to come in and save you. You shouldn't have that. You should have a certain amount of resources at your disposal at any time to protect your family. What do you recommend we do to, I don't want to say like pandemic proof our lives, but like just protect ourselves, give ourselves a buffer, besides the obvious that I've mentioned? What else should we do to make sure that we are protecting our families?
Sure. So the last part of the book's in 4 parts. The last part of the book is on this whole thing of preparation, the topic of preparation. How do we protect ourselves? And there's really 3 ways we protect ourselves, 3 main categories. One is to become mentally resilient, so that we're able to not be tricked and not be alarmed and not be intimidated, right? So that's the first one, becoming watchful and mentally resilient, and I'll explain that in just a second a little further. And then the next one is physical preparation, which goes over some of the kind of things you were just mentioning. It's a list with QR codes where you can connect and just take care of it, buy what you need in these different areas of physical preparation. And then the third one is spiritual preparation, getting right with God, so that you are able to cope with these things if they do start collapsing further. But going to the first major category, becoming watchful and mentally resilient, what this is an exercise in saying, okay, if these are their goals, if these 11 collapse points are their goals and they're working to collapse them, and we know what they've done so far because you've read the book up to that point, the next thing is to anticipate what they might do next so that if they do it, you're not intimidated, shocked, you're not so susceptible to fear because you've kind of played it out in your mind. And so the book goes into that, into those different things. I'm not going to list them here because it would take too long. But, within each collapse points, national borders, what might they do next? The banking system, things like that, education system, energy, environment, how would they try to collapse this? And, with the current administration we have right now, I think we've gotten a reprieve. We cannot assume that we'll always have that, right? It could turn, it could change, and we could be back to where there's people in power who are intentionally continuing the pattern toward collapse of the borders and everything else. We saw the energy supply first day in office, and again, I'm not trying to be political. I'm just trying to be honest here. The first day in office, Biden shut down the Keystone Pipeline and did a bunch of other things to harm our energy supply, right? We saw the wide open borders. I mean, it's just crazy, right? So there's things like that right now we're in a place where we're trying to repair these things, but it could easily change. So it's important to do this exercise even if you're one of the people who feel like, okay, we kind of got a break right now. I don't need to think about that. It's still important to think those things through. And then on the physical preparation side, the book starts with a quote from Proverbs. It says, "A prudent man sees danger and hides himself, but the simple go on and suffer for it." So, that's kind of like a warning, not to let this normalcy bias that we all experience get the best of us. We should prepare. I'm not saying we should have 2 years like the Mormons do, but we should have some level of preparation. And the book gets into, food and water, home and personal defense, electronic privacy, access to cash, to purchasing power, and to protecting your retirement savings, in case the banking system comes down. Energy, what you can do to have affordable backup energy, to have medical supplies, and then to have faith and mental resilience as well. So it gets into big picture things, but it also gets into details too, and it has all the QR codes where you can go and purchase things related to each of these, including water purification tablets and systems, filtering systems. It talks about having things like canned and jarred food in reserve. Tells you a way to be able to make healthy, organic, homemade bread, a system for doing that. Long-term storable, freeze-dried foods, growing your own food, books on doing that. Communications privacy, email privacy, how to establish, email privacy instead of using these free systems like Gmail and the other ones that are basically snooping on you. Ways to have a safer cell phone that is not reporting your location, as all the standard cell phones do. Backup energy, wood stoves, pellet stoves, things like that. Satellite phones. All these things are in there. So that's kind of the big picture. So mental resilience, spiritual resilience, and physical resilience.
I love it. You have brought up a few times the example of the border crisis from Biden's administration, and I think a lot of people don't know about it. People that aren't, plugged into alternative media, people that plug into like MSNBC or whatever. The mainstream media touts it as a good thing, is not that big of a deal. They've sort of well, it's part of the agenda, right? So they make it seem like it's not. It was never really a bad thing, and I want to bring up, because this was eye opening to me. So I interviewed a few years ago, episode 437. Again, my show is a health show, right? But it's mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical and energetic health. So health can kind of cross over into these conversations because this is part of our health. And so I had the mayor of New York City on my show, Eric Adams. Now he's a Democrat, and he's a wonderful, wonderful man, and I absolutely loved interviewing him, and I highly recommend people. It's a short interview, actually, episode 437. Highly recommend listening to it. He was diagnosed with diabetes, like really bad diabetes, losing his eyesight, heart issues, high cholesterol, all that stuff. And he was sent home with multiple drugs and told, basically, you're just going to be this way for the rest of your life, and you're going to have a shorter life, and you're going to suffer as a result. And he was a detective, and he decided to start doing some detective work. And he typed in, instead of how to live with diabetes, he typed in the internet search, how to reverse diabetes. And he stumbled upon the same people that I've interviewed, the whole food, plant-based way of eating, a specific way of eating that heals insulin resistance and reverses type 1 diabetes. And for type 2 diabetes. And for type 1 diabetics, it substantially reduces their, 90% of their insulin needs go away. So they take crazy amounts of less insulin that they need, and their blood sugars are balanced, which is something for a type 1 diabetic. My grandma was a type 1, and you keeping it as balanced as possible is life-saving. You can die from having dysregulation. So this type of diet, this very healing diet, reverses all those issues. And even people who are maybe not diabetic yet, but just like borderline or having blood sugar dysregulation, it is so life-changing. So he came on and shared his story, and he wasn't selling anything. He was just like getting down around the circuit because he was so excited. God called him to share his story. So I saw an interview with him. Someone had directed me to go check out his interview with Tucker Carlson about the border crisis. And he shares a fascinating story. Now, remember, he's a Democrat, okay? Mm-hmm. And he was trying, but he loves New York City. He just absolutely adores New York City. As a mayor, he wants to protect it and keep it safe and make it good for everyone there. And he uncovers what was happening, that he was told to sit on his hands, shut up, and be a good Democrat, and let them flood his city with people who were given like a weekly or monthly check or whatever, given hotel rooms for free to live in, and that these people were told they don't have visas, so they're not allowed to work. But imagine a population of people from other countries who are given an allowance and given free room and board, and then they don't have anything to do with their time. And a lot of these people,
that can't be a good thing.
Well, some of them are good people. I'm not saying they're all bad people, right?
Yeah.
But there's just certain amount of people would act like reckless teenagers, right? And so he from his police background, he was more concerned about the security and safety of everyone. And it got worse and worse. So he dives into explaining in detail what happened and what happened in the last 4 years. From that standpoint, remembering he's a Democrat, right? This isn't this isn't like Republicans are right and Democrats are wrong.
Sure.
This isn't,
Yep.
This is like there are people who are speaking up on both sides. And the issue isn't that the borders were open. The issue is that we're lied to, we're controlled, and that it spills over into our physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and energetic health. And so educating ourselves, stepping out of Plato's cave, if you know the allegory of the cave, it's exactly where we are right now, where we have to rebirth ourselves and be willing to challenge our belief systems, be willing to look at, don't blindly trust your doctor that's holding the prescription pad. right? Like these prescriptions are petroleum-based chemicals, and don't just blindly trust the FDA said they're okay, so then they're okay. Every drug that was taken off the market for killing too many people, including my mother, was first approved, right? Everything's first approved. But then they kill enough people and then they get taken off the market. Like you can't blindly trust
Right.
anything.
Yes.
So the first thing you do is stop blindly trusting things. I know it's a little exhausting, especially, emotionally exhausting. And then you start to pour through this information. That's why I love your book, that you've put together these wonderful resources that people can pour through to wake themselves up to this information. But don't live in fear. And I think that's really important, because I think Jesus says like 37 times or 38 times in the Bible to not worry, like stop worrying, don't worry, don't have anxiety. Like you're told many times in the Bible, do not worry. But not worrying doesn't mean sticking your head in the sand, right?
Right,
Not
big
worrying
difference.
means don't live on that vibration, because when you're in that fear and that worry, right, that's then kind of like the enemy's won, because they've got you,
Yeah.
right? Whereas if you rise above it and you fill yourself with love and you just imagine pouring love on all the people around you, and you're like, no, I'm creating a bubble of love. Like we're rising above it and we're going to protect ourselves. Good will prevail, but we have to wake ourselves up first to even know that we're actually in a spiritual war. We're already in a spiritual war, whether you believe it or not. So gaining this information is the first step, but I want everyone to start just questioning. Look, like if you have to read an ingredient box, know that there are things in the food. So for example, ice cream. Ice cream has antifreeze in it, but they don't have to list it as an ingredient because it's industry standard. So
Oh my gosh.
there's food grade bleach in processed meats, but they don't have to tell you it's an ingredient because it's industry standard, because it's a process. So when anything is like processed, there are chemicals, there are solvents, there are things like oil, cooking oil. I have a great interview with Udo recently, and at least this year. Sometime this year, I interviewed Udo on oil, and it was fascinating to talk about how they make cooking oil. They put deodorants and solvents, all these chemicals
Oh my
into it,
gosh.
and it's really gross. But
Eesh.
if you have to eat a food with ingredients, just know that there could be, and there likely are, more ingredients in it than it says, because they don't have to disclose industry standards. So the best thing you can do is cook from scratch. And I have a whole section in my book on how to do that like quickly and on a budget. So just like little plug for my book, which is Addicted to Wellness. It is a guide that teaches you how to do these. Like it's where, the rubber meets the road, and you actually get great resources to do this work. But I'm excited for your book, because it's very similar to mine in that it's rubber meets the road. Here's the videos to watch, here's the actual steps to take. And the first step is mindset, and the first step is like waking up to this information, even knowing it exists in the first place. So I really, really appreciate you, and appreciate that you listened to God when he assigned you with this. I'm excited to see where it goes, where it takes us.
Well, thanks so much. And when you were saying that, something just hit me that I never thought of before, but I think it really applies. So your audience has woken up, or they're in various stages of waking up to the realities of the medical industry and the food industry. And you are waking them up to the truth, right? That's what you do. You're showing them the alternatives, right, to the mainstream thinking in the food and medical areas in particular, right?
Mm-hmm.
Take that same attitude and apply it to everything. That's pretty much what this book is about. Take what you've learned, because you've learned beyond the shadow of a doubt that we have not been told the truth when it comes to medicine and when it comes to food and nutrition, right? So all this book does is applies that principle everywhere, and will show you the truth. And if it can be true with food and nutrition and medical industry, it can be true in other places. So the book will challenge you to open your eyes and just look at the facts, look at the evidence. And I think you'll find it an enjoyable experience at one level, again, because of the QR codes. And there's also dozens of graphics in the book to kind of lighten it up as you go along the way. So it's not a tedious read. It's really just trying to be an educational and informative and kind of fast-paced learning experience that is really kind of unlike anything I've ever seen myself. But I hope your audience will kind of take a look at it at globalcollapsebook.com. There's links to get it on Amazon. There's also, can I just mention the promo code?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's LTH. No, I'm very, very grateful that you're giving listeners a discount. So coupon code LTH at globalcollapsebook.com, and that you're going to send them a signed copy, which I think is super awesome. To wrap up this interview, as you were going through the book, I'm sure you had a lot of moments where you're just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. I can't believe I just learned this. I can't believe I just learned this. What was the biggest aha moment as you were doing the research and you just were like, I can't believe they said that, or something that kind of just completely boggles the mind, and yet it's true.
Okay. Yes, there were actually many of those, but probably the one that stands out to me the most. There is a link to an 11-minute highlight reel in the book on an exercise called Event 201, a pandemic exercise that occurred in October 2019, just prior to the COVID crisis. And Event 201 was a rehearsal for that coming COVID crisis at a level of detail that you would not believe, right down to fake newsreels that were part of the rehearsal. They made it sound like it was just an exercise in case some kind of a pandemic occurred. But the pandemic that occurred was virtually identical in reality that occurred, in 2020 was all played out in 2019. And with a level of detail you would not believe. It was like they were prophesying the future, and which means they knew it. They knew what was coming, and they were planning it. And it's the World Economic Forum. So it's the highest level of international, I'll call it government, but they're kind of outside of government, So you really need to see that Event 201 pandemic exercise. You could look it up yourself, but if you get the book, you'll have the QR code to go right to it. That was jaw-dropping to me because the level of detail and accuracy of what it predicted, supposedly doing some random exercise, it just happened to come true exactly in reality. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I've looked into that also, and it is highly suspicious, especially when we now know, and that all the evidence pointed to that it was gain of function research, the United States gain of function research done in Wuhan. So we created the virus, and all the media and everything. It just was like, it just seemed like planned. I know that's a lot of people joke and call it the plandemic. And again, that's the big conspiracy thing. And people died, lives were destroyed. It was horrible. And there was a lot of disorganization in local governments for sure. And what they did on many levels, which was exercising their ability to control and to manipulate and to control your beliefs. Right, and to control your the reality, control reality, create the fearscape.
Mm-hmm.
I said early on, I was in an interview with a naturopath, and I said it was early in 2020, and I said I just felt it, and what I saw playing out, I said we're gonna be able to see 20, 30 years from now, like when the data really, the real data is it's not being suppressed anymore,
Right.
we'll be able to see the truth. And truth is already starting to come out because the pharmaceutical companies tried to get their all their studies to be sealed for like 50 years or 70 years, something crazy like that. And they got unsealed. And what we see now, which has been released, I've been posting this on X actually for the last few months. But there's all this evidence. If you pour through their data, it shows that they knew that their vaccines would cause a tremendous amount of death and damage and cause much more harm than good. Well, we know now that they don't prevent the spread. And to make people afraid and angry of those who would choose not to vaccinate. Like, you're vaccinated, why are you angry at the unvaccinated? I thought your vaccine would protect you, right? So they creating this like Lord of the Flies effect where they could weaponize the masses, the people who are sleeping, right?
Yeah.
To peer pressure each other into following along with the the mandates, which mandates aren't laws. And I have some friends who were afraid of losing their job, and now they're chronically sick, they're chronically hurt.
That's so sad.
And many people are chronically sick, hurt, or died. One of my best friends dropped dead, like suddenly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing the turbo cancers just in friends, that I have. It's you can't prove it,
Right.
but this wasn't happening before.
Well, in Australia, which look at areas of very high compliance, forced compliance to get the vaccines, and you are now seeing turbo cancers popping up like crazy in those pockets of society. So there's certain countries like Australia. I know, I believe Singapore had like 100%. I believe it was Singapore that had 100% compliance for getting the jabs.
Jeez.
But just looking at the last few years, and from the standpoint of like how much on how many levels did they create a fearscape and manipulate and control us, right? Control our behavior. Whether it's you come from the conspiracy mindset that I'm describing, where it's like all pre-planned, like you said in 2019, they really did have this event where they practiced what they would do globally if there was a pandemic, and then it happened. Or if you look at it from the, I don't want to say naive, but from like maybe the hopeful standpoint that like there isn't a world government trying to kill us, like the world isn't run by Satanists. If you're like a more like balanced or normal, like a average, not normal, but like an average person would look at it and go, well, maybe we're not all like, maybe there isn't a one world government trying to kill us, but the last 5 years was really messed up. Like, we can all agree that like governments were either messy and inefficient and overplayed their power in some ways, and like that we overtrusted the pharmaceutical industries, which now we know covered up. They knew this vaccine would hurt people and not help people, and they covered that up, and the government still went on to push it. Like, just look at it from that standpoint. Like, we can't blindly trust, whether it's orchestrated or whether it's just money-driven chaos. We can't blindly trust. So I think people who aren't conspiracy theorists or like really don't like conspiracies, I think they can still learn from your book, because it's what lens are you looking at it at these actions through? Is it all money-driven? Is it satanic? Is it is it wanting to depopulate? Like whatever lens that you kind of look at it through, at least we can get a big picture to understand like, the whole food supply is controlled by Vanguard. Like, that is wild. Like, your medicine, your health is controlled by organizations, right? So how can we unplug from that as much as possible, have a buffer, protect ourselves, like have a homestead or connect to local farms, or what can we do to take control and not be controlled by these organizations? So that for me, that is so important to have that anonymity Am I saying it right? To
Sure.
have the autonomy,
Yes.
to protect ourselves emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically, energetically. Have those emergency plans in place, and I like that you have those resources in your book too. So thank you for coming on the show. Globalcollapsebook.com, coupon code LTH, and I appreciate that you're giving a discount to our listeners. Hey, I'd love for you to come back on the show if, God talks to you again, gives you another mission.
Yeah, you never know. Anything's
You never
possible.
know. Yeah.
Well, thanks, Ashley. It's really been great talking to you, and I'm so grateful that you invited me on your show. And yeah, I'd be happy to come back whenever you like. So thanks very much.
Awesome. Thank you. Allan, Paul Roberts, it was great having you on the show. Thank you so much.
You too. Take care.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Saltzman, and I am the head coach at TakeYourSupplements.com. I wanted to share with you a testimonial that I received from a client of mine, one of the many success stories that I have, but this one just was very close to my heart because she's young and has struggled so much to regain her health and has had just such a phenomenal overcoming testimonial that I really wanted to share it today. She writes, "My name is Angela. I am 25 years old. I have been on a health journey that consists of an autoimmune disease, fibromyalgia, and other issues that left me feeling defeated and debilitated every day for 15 years. I have seen 8 different specialists, and many doctors have been in and out of physical therapy dealing with symptoms I thought would leave me wheelchair bound and in diapers by the time I was 30. Well, I am now 25, and after everything I've learned through Jennifer at TakeYourSupplements.com, that definitely won't happen. Some things doctors have said to me have crushed my hopes. I was told to lose weight and that my pain would go away. So I lost 90 pounds, and the pain was still there. My days were short, and after a 5-hour work shift or even a day of running an errand or two, I was left debilitated. So the doctors told me the pain was all in my head because I was previously diagnosed with fibromyalgia, the only diagnosis so many doctors agreed upon because they couldn't think of anything else despite me having some form of an immune disease. I felt hopeless and as if life was going to pass me by. There were times when I tried hiking 1 or 2 miles and I was unable to walk or function for days after. I was missing out on trips and adventures, and as embarrassing as it sounds, I was having BM bathroom emergencies so frequently, it was ruining my daily function. I could go on about the ways I was ill and what it kept me from, but honestly, after the progress I've made, a long list of symptoms I used to have become a blur of the past. When I finally decided to check out TakeYourSupplements.com, recommended through the Learn True Health podcast, I was immediately connected with Jennifer, who kept track of my overwhelmingly long list of complex symptoms and thoroughly created a personalized step-by-step plan. Her recommendations have changed my life, and the changes were practically instant. She put me on a complete digestive activation complex that has taken away all of my stomach pain, unnecessary bloating and gas, and she explained to me that the formula supports every stage of digestion from breakdown to absorption, designed to optimize stomach acid, bile flow, and nutrient assimilation. She recommended a cellular repair-focused diet, which not only has helped my stomach, but the food gives me energy and makes me feel really good. It reduces inflammation in my body, something no doctor ever told me about. When I first started with Jennifer, I took the TakeYourSupplements.com health evaluation, and I scored a negative 32. I just retook it and scored a 69. That's 100 points better in 5 months. Still room for progress, but my life nevertheless has been changed, and I am so happy. My days have been much longer and full of adventure. I have hiked the 4,000-footer mountains of New Hampshire, something I never thought I would be able to do. I have had successful days of workouts, errands, and work. The Learn True Health podcast and Jennifer at TakeYourSupplements.com have done more for me than any doctor ever has. And it all started with validation. I am now 25 and feel my life is just now starting. It's really hard to put into words just how much has changed for me. So I'll keep on living as actively as possible and learning as much as I can so I can finally take part in the beautiful things of life. I can't wait for the adventures to come with the hope I've been given through this program. If anyone out there hears this and feels their doctors are taking more than they're giving, give this a try. Thank you, Ashley and Jennifer. Your knowledge and expertise is a gift I cherish every day. One of the things that really sets our program apart is that we take the time to understand the different categories of nutritional deficiency in an individual, design a program specific to that, follow up with them, and help them fine tune it as necessary. So nobody feels like they're out there figuring it out for themselves. They're coached through the process of onboarding, adjusting, and then eventually, hopefully, moving to a more of a maintenance program for extended well-being. And we watch their health score over the 90-day time elevate greatly. Like this young gal I just read, her score went up 100 points. We did it at the 5-month mark in this case. But I always do the health evaluation after 3 months, and I always see people's score elevate. So wherever somebody is, they're going to get supported help that is specific to their situation with a program that is so foundational and so thorough that we don't miss things that other doctors miss.